At 76, Richard Gere, one of Hollywood's most iconic leading men, lives in self-imposed exile, not because of disgrace or failure, but by choice. Gere, who once captured hearts worldwide with Pretty Woman and commanded the screen as the epitome of charm, could have had anything he wanted. Yet today, he's banned from the world's largest market, China, and estranged from the very industry that made him a star. He now resides in Madrid, raising 2 toddlers, a life far removed from the bright lights of Hollywood. What makes his story so shocking is that Gere orchestrated his own exile. While other actors chased billion-dollar franchises, he chose to walk away, valuing inner peace over external fame. He traded red carpets for refugee camps, and when the industry demanded silence, he spoke out. The price was steep. Hollywood essentially erased him. But Gere found something that fame could never offer: peace. A restless youth in Syracuse, Richard Tiffany Gere was born on August 31st, 1949, in Philadelphia, but his formative years unfolded in Syracuse, New York, a small town with a population of just 5,000. Despite its ordinary appearance, Syracuse provided the backdrop for Gere's extraordinary restlessness. His father, Homer George Gere, was an insurance agent by trade, but his true calling was his Methodist faith. Homer was known in their town as the man to turn to in times of trouble. He embodied compassion, a trait that deeply influenced Richard's upbringing. His mother, Doris Ann, filled their modest home with warmth and music. Growing up, Gere was the second of 5 children, and from an early age he was different. Not rebellious, but searching. His childhood was marked by a love for music and a drive for excellence. He played trumpet, guitar, and even excelled in gymnastics, showing a mind and body driven by discipline and curiosity. A young philosopher with big questions. At North Syracuse Central High School, Gere stood out, not just for his talent, but for his insatiable desire to understand the world. He excelled in gymnastics, but his mind was equally restless, questioning existence itself. After graduating in 1967, he received a scholarship to study gymnastics at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. But Gere chose a different path. He studied philosophy instead. He carried Jean-Paul Sartre's Being and Nothingness under his arm, challenging his own perceptions of existence and reality. College wasn't a cage for Gere. It was a launchpad for deeper exploration. He wasn't satisfied with the surface of life. He needed to understand what lay beneath. For him, philosophy wasn't just academic. It was survival. He sought answers to questions that weren't part of the typical college curriculum. What is being? What is reality? What is the meaning of life? The search for inner peace, a spiritual awakening. As a young man in his early 20s, Gere's quest for deeper meaning led him to Buddhism. It was Zen Buddhism at first, which provided a framework for stillness and peace amidst his internal chaos. He studied under Kyozan Jushu Sasaki, a Zen master, practicing meditation and Tai Chi in a small New York apartment. For months, he isolated himself to quiet the noise in his head, searching for a deeper connection to life. But in 1978, everything changed when he traveled to Nepal with Brazilian artist Sylvia Martins. In the shadow of the Himalayas, Gere encountered Tibetan monks and lamas, whose teachings resonated deeply with him. He met the Dalai Lama, whose words would change his life. The Dalai Lama's gentle challenge of Western acting methods, particularly the Stanislavski system, struck a chord with Gere. He embraced Tibetan Buddhism, specifically the Gelugpa school, and began his journey as a pilgrim, practicing in remote monasteries across Tibet. The Hollywood rise, from struggling actor to global superstar. In the late 1970s, Hollywood came calling for Richard Gere. Small roles at first, like Looking for Mr. Goodbar in 1977, where he played a drug-addicted pimp, led to larger roles, most notably in Days of Heaven, 1978. But it was his role in American Gigolo, 1980, that turned him into a global star. Gere's portrayal of a high-end escort navigating the glamour and danger of Los Angeles was magnetic. Overnight, he became a sex symbol. The 1980s were a decade that cemented his place in Hollywood's elite. Films like An Officer and a Gentleman, 1982, made him one of the most bankable stars in Hollywood, earning him critical acclaim and box office success. Yet, as his fame skyrocketed, Gere's internal conflict deepened. His Buddhist practices and meditation clashed with the celebrity status he had acquired, leaving him torn between his public persona and his spiritual quest for inner peace. The spiritual crisis: Buddhism versus Hollywood. In the midst of his booming Hollywood career, Richard Gere faced a personal dilemma. His acting career was taking off, but his Buddhist practice, which emphasized detachment from ego and material desire, seemed to be in direct conflict with the fame he was accumulating. Gere's public image, largely built on his roles as a heartthrob, felt increasingly shallow to him. In 1987, he began speaking out about Tibet and the Chinese government's brutal occupation. His outspoken support for Tibet put him at odds with Hollywood, particularly with China, a major financial market for the industry. Gere's stance was a personal one. He wasn't simply advocating for Tibet's rights. He was following the Dalai Lama's request for help. His statements were not well received by Hollywood, which saw China as a crucial market. In 1993, during the Academy Awards, Gere used his platform to publicly criticize China's human rights record, a move that would lead to his gradual estrangement from the industry. A controversial love story: Richard and Cindy Crawford. In the midst of his personal and professional upheaval, Gere's relationship with supermodel Cindy Crawford captured the public's imagination. The couple, despite their 17-year age gap, appeared to be the ultimate Hollywood power couple. They shared a passion for Buddhism and meditation, and together they traveled to India and Nepal. But behind the glamorous facade, their marriage faced challenges. Cindy, still young and eager, found herself molding her life around Richard's interests, while Richard, who had spent years defining himself outside Hollywood's expectations, struggled to fit into the conventional mold of marriage. Their spontaneous wedding in Las Vegas in 1991, which ended with a quiet dinner at Denny's, symbolized their unconventional approach to life. But the relationship eventually unraveled under the pressure of their differing needs and public scrutiny. Their separation in 1994, after just 4 years of marriage, shocked the world, though the cracks had been visible for some time. Richard Gere's exile: a chosen path. As Gere's career cooled and his personal life became more public, he chose to prioritize his spiritual beliefs over the Hollywood lifestyle. His activism, particularly his outspoken support for Tibet, had made him unwelcome in the industry. Major studios began to distance themselves from him, and opportunities that once seemed endless dried up. Hollywood had essentially erased him from the public consciousness, but Gere didn't regret his decision. At 73, he chose to live in Madrid, raising his infant sons in relative obscurity. He found peace in his exile, something Hollywood had never been able to offer him. He no longer sought validation from the industry that had made him a star. Instead, he focused on his family, his spirituality, and his inner peace. In doing so, Gere found something that Hollywood could never provide: freedom from the demands of fame.